The air in the grand consensus chamber was a tangible weight, thick with the silence of ages and the more immediate, suffocating pressure of a decision that could unravel 1,000 generations of stability. High Scion Valerius stood upon his designated dais, one of a constellation of floating obsidian platforms that orbited the chamber's heart. Below, in the cavernous core, a holographic projection shimmered, a source of collective dread that had paralyzed the Cathar Imperium for 3 full rotations. It was a void within a void, a shape that defied the elegant, flowing logic of Cathar design and the chaotic beauty of nature. It was an object of stark, brutalist geometry, a dagger of impossible angles and surfaces that seemed to drink the very light of the projection. It was the human anomaly. For cycles, it had hung there in the silent emptiness of the Epsilon Indi system, a territory newly charted and marked for nascent colonization. It had appeared without warning, without a ripple in spacetime, without any detectable energy signature that would herald the arrival of a vessel. One moment there was empty space. The next there was this intrusion, this violation of physical law. It did not move. It did not broadcast. It simply was. Valerius felt the low, thrumming psychic resonance of the other scions in the chamber, a symphony of controlled fear, analytical curiosity, and rising aggression. Their thoughts were not broadcast in words, but in pure emotional and logical states, a nuanced communication perfected over eons. He could feel the sharp, piercing edge of Scion Vorlag's impatience, a desire for action that bordered on righteous fury. He could also sense the soft, wavering aura of Scion Lyra's cautious apprehension, a plea for wisdom over might. "It mocks us with its silence," Vorlag's voice resonated, eschewing the subtlety of psychic communion for the directness of vocal projection. His platform, positioned opposite Valerius, was edged in a faint crimson light, a traditional signifier of the warrior caste from which he ascended. "This thing. It sits at the edge of our expansion, a sentinel of a power we do not comprehend. Its design is an insult to physics. Its materials register on our deep range scans as a paradox, impossibly dense, yet emitting no gravitational distortion beyond its physical mass. It is a weapon. It must be. It is a predator feigning slumber, waiting for us to expose our throats." Valerius watched the hologram, his multifaceted eyes tracing the lines that should not meet, the planes that seemed to curve into dimensions his mind could not grasp. Vorlag's assessment was the logical conclusion of a martial mind. The Cathar had not risen to dominate their stellar cluster through passivity. They were a species of profound balance, but that balance was achieved by understanding that sometimes overwhelming force was the only path to stability. Yet this anomaly did not feel like a prelude to war. It felt older, colder. It felt like a judgment. "A predator does not announce its presence so brazenly, Scion Vorlag," came Lyra's voice, a soft counterpoint to Vorlag's harsh declaration. Her platform glowed with the gentle azure of the diplomatic and scientific castes. "It has had ample opportunity to strike. Our survey fleets have approached it. Our probes have scanned it. It has remained inert. Its silence may not be a mockery, but a meditation, a message we lack the sophistication to interpret." "Or a trap we are too naive to see," Vorlag countered, his voice a low growl. "The probes we sent were not unaffected. Their logic cores were confused. Their sensory data returned corrupted, not by jamming or active interference, but as if the very space around the vessel resisted observation. The reports stated that proximity to the object induced a state of causal ambiguity in their temporal sensors. These are not the actions of a peaceful monument. This is a technology of war so advanced it weaponizes reality itself. It is like something from the future." The phrase hung in the chamber's immense volume, echoing in the minds of every scion present. From the future. It was a concept both poetic and terrifying. Cathar technology was ancient, refined, and predictable. They had mastered gravity, energy, and the fabric of spacetime to a degree that allowed for instantaneous travel between their core worlds. But they did not tamper with the arrow of time. It was the one fundamental law they revered as untouchable, the ultimate source of balance. To suggest a vessel could be built with technology that violated causality was tantamount to heresy, a whisper of a power akin to godhood. Valerius finally spoke, his own voice calm and measured, designed to quell the rising tides of fear and aggression. "What Vorlag says has merit. The passivity of the object could indeed be a stratagem. But Lyra's caution is the foundation upon which our Imperium was built. We are a people of balance, we do not trike at shadows until we understand the nature of the light that casts them. We know nothing of these humans." The name itself was a whisper, a fragment of data recovered from a derelict probe of some lesser, long-dead race that had skirted their territory millennia ago. The probe had logged a single, garbled transmission before its power failed, a message that spoke of a species called humanity that had expanded from a distant arm of the galaxy with unnerving speed. The data was dismissed as unreliable, a ghost story from a forgotten age. Until now, the anomaly was designated human by preliminary consensus, a placeholder for an enigma. Valerius shifted his focus from the hologram to the wider chamber. The faces of the Scions, usually serene and impassive, were etched with a deep collective anxiety. The Cathar had not faced a potential peer in 10,000 years. They had encountered dozens of spacefaring species, but all were either primitive fledglings or stagnant relics. They were subsumed, guided, or isolated, all according to the grand calculus of imperial stability. But this ship, this silent monolith, suggested a power that was not just peer, but perhaps superior. A power that operated on principles they could not even begin to fathom. "The archives have been scoured," Lyra added, her voice regaining strength. "The few references we have to these humans are contradictory. Some accounts paint them as conquerors, a swarm that consumes worlds. Others describe them as builders, patrons of art, philosophers. The data is too sparse, too old. To act on such fragmented intelligence would be to gamble with the fate of our people. And to wait is to cede the initiative." Vorlag's platform pulsed with a more intense crimson. "We have assembled a battle group, a host of our finest warships, shielded and armed with singularity projectors. We can unmake that entire sector of space from a safe distance. Erase the anomaly. If it is a threat, we will have neutralized it. If it is a monument, then its creators will know the price of placing their idols in our territory." Valerius felt a coldness spread through him at the thought. The casual deployment of singularity projectors, weapons that tore holes in the universe, was a measure of last resort. To use them preemptively against an unknown was an act of supreme arrogance. It was the kind of thinking that had led to the Great Schism, the dark age from which the Cathar had clawed their way back by embracing the creed of balance. He feared that Vorlag, in his zeal to protect the Imperium, would lead them back into that very darkness. "You speak of security, Vorlag, but your path leads only to uncertainty," Valerius said, his voice resonating with the authority of the High Scion. "If we destroy this vessel, we learn nothing. We will live forever under the shadow of its creators, wondering when they will come to avenge their silent sentinel. We will have traded a known mystery for an unknown and potentially infinite threat. Is that balance, or is it fear masquerading as strength?" He let his words settle, the psychic hum in the chamber shifting from sharp anxiety to a more contemplative melancholy. He saw the logic of his argument taking root in the minds of the assembled Scions. Even Vorlag's crimson glow dimmed slightly, his aggression tempered by the cold weight of Valerius's reasoning. "Then what do you propose, High Scion?" Vorlag asked, his tone still hard but stripped of its earlier fire. "We cannot allow it to remain. The system it occupies is vital for our next phase of expansion. Its presence destabilizes the region. It projects an aura of wrongness. Our colonists will not settle there. Our fleets report unease among their crews. The very existence of this object is a psychological attack." Valerius turned back to the hologram. The human ship was a stark black wound in the fabric of space. It was utterly alien, not just in its design but in its philosophy. Cathar ships were things of beauty, flowing, organic constructs that harmonized with the gravitational currents of the cosmos. This was a statement of defiance. It did not harmonize, it imposed. It was a declaration that its creators did not bend to the laws of the universe, but that the laws of the universe bent to them. And yet, it was utterly, profoundly passive, a contradiction that lay at the heart of their paralysis. "We will do what we have always done when faced with the unknown," Valerius declared, his voice filling the chamber. "We will approach with caution, but also with intent. We will not send probes. We will not attack from a distance. I will lead a diplomatic mission. I will take our flagship, the Equilibrium, and I will approach the anomaly. We will broadcast the universal language of mathematics. We will show them that we are a species of intellect and reason, not of instinct and fear. We will ask them a simple question. Who are you, and what is your purpose here?" A wave of shock rippled through the consensus. For a High Scion to personally lead a first contact mission was unprecedented. It was a risk of the highest order. If the vessel was hostile, the decapitation of their leadership could throw the Imperium into chaos. Lyra's platform pulsed a bright, worried azure. Vorlag's flared with a complex mixture of protest and grudging respect. "High Scion, that is an unnecessary risk. Lyra stated, her voice trembling slightly. "Send an emissary, a vessel designed for this purpose." "No," Valeria said, his decision hardening into resolve. "An emissary can be sacrificed. An emissary can be dismissed. The presence of a high scion signifies the gravity with which we view this encounter. It is a gesture of respect and a statement of our own power. It will show these humans that we are not afraid, but that we choose discourse over destruction. It is the only way to maintain the balance. We will offer them a chance to speak. If they answer with silence or with violence, then we will have our answer. And then Vorlag," he said, turning his gaze to the warrior scion, "you may have your war, but not before we have exhausted the path of peace. The consensus will vote." The chamber fell silent once more, but this was a different kind of silence. It was the quiet of minds weighing the fate of their civilization. The great holographic orrery above them began to shift, 1,000 points of light representing the member worlds of the Imperium. Slowly, one by one, they began to change color, from the neutral silver of deliberation to the calm, steady green of assent. Lyra's caste, ever hopeful for a peaceful resolution, turned first. Then the sectors of industry, of science, of culture. Finally, with a visible hesitation that was a profound statement in itself, the worlds under Vorlag's military oversight shifted to green. The vote was unanimous. Valerius felt no triumph, only the immense, crushing weight of what was to come. He was about to knock on the door of a ghost, and he did not know if a god or a demon would answer. The journey to the Epsilon Indi system was a silent, tense affair. The Cathar flagship Equilibrium was a masterpiece of imperial engineering, a vessel miles long that resembled a polished obsidian stingray, its form designed to flow through the currents of spacetime with minimal disruption. It moved through the void not with crude propulsion, but by folding space around itself, a gentle, elegant manipulation of reality. Inside, Valeria stood on the bridge, a vast, circular chamber where the starfield was not viewed on screens, but was projected directly into the minds of the command crew through the ship's neural interface. He saw the universe as it truly was, a tapestry of gravitational waves, radiation, and dark energy. Yet as they neared their destination, a blank spot began to form in that perfect perception, a hole in the tapestry. The human anomaly. As they dropped out of folded space a safe distance away, the object was there, exactly as the probes had shown. A physical impossibility hanging against the distant glow of the system's star. It was stark, matte black, absorbing all incident light. Its hull was a mosaic of geometric panels that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves if you stared too long, a subtle, nauseating optical illusion that defied comprehension. It was larger than he had anticipated, larger than the Equilibrium. Larger than any single vessel the Cathar had ever constructed, and the silence, it was not merely the absence of sound or transmission. It was a presence, a deep, resonant quiet that seemed to press in on the ship's sensors, on the very minds of the crew. "We are broadcasting the prime number sequence as ordered, High Scion," the communications officer reported, his voice a strained whisper, as if afraid to break the profound stillness outside. "All frequencies, all spectra, from simple radio to modulated graviton pulses. There is no response." Valerius stood before the mental projection of the anomaly, his gaze fixed upon it. He had expected this. A test of patience, perhaps. He ordered the broadcast to continue. For hours, the Equilibrium sent out its peaceful, mathematical greeting into the void, a greeting that had initiated contact with a dozen other species. Here it was swallowed by the silence. The tension on the bridge was palpable. He could feel the low-level anxiety of the crew, their deep-seated unease at this silent giant that seemed to mock their very existence. Vorlag's arguments echoed in his mind. Was this a trap? Was he, in his quest for a balanced solution, leading them all to their doom? He pushed the doubt aside. The path was chosen. He would see it to its end. He ordered his vessel to move closer. Not with aggression, but with a slow, deliberate drift, its defensive shields lowered in a universal sign of non-hostile intent. They crept forward, meter by agonizing meter, across the silent gulf between the two. Ships, the anomaly grew in the mind's eye, a mountain of silent, alien metal. The feeling of wrongness intensified. The ship's navigational sensors began to report minor temporal fluctuations. The fabric of causality itself was thin here, stretched taut by the sheer presence of the human vessel. Then, after a period of time that felt like an eternity, something happened. It was not a response. It was not a weapon firing or a shield flaring to life. It was a change in the anomaly itself. One of the flat, black panels on its surface, a section larger than the Equilibrium's entire bridge, began to glow. not with the harsh light of energy but with a soft, internal luminescence. The light resolved itself into an image. It was a star chart, but it was a chart of a galaxy Valerius did not recognize. The spiral arms were different, the stellar density all wrong. And then another image, a planet, blue and white swirling with clouds, and then a shape, a biological form, bipedal, symmetrical, frail-looking, a human. The image was a work of art, rendered with a resolution so perfect it seemed real. It depicted a being of profound sorrow, its head bowed, its form conveying a sense of immense, soul-crushing loss. It was not a threat, it was a lament. And then a voice. It did not come through the comm system. It bloomed directly inside Valerius's mind and the minds of every Cathar on the bridge. It was a voice that was not a voice, a chorus of a billion souls speaking as one, yet it was also a single, clear, calm baritone. It spoke in pure, translated Cathar, a flawless, unaccented rendition of their most formal dialect. "We are the custodians of the vessel you see before you. Its designation is Vigil." The psychic impact of the voice was staggering. It was not hostile, but it was immeasurably vast, ancient, and heavy with a weariness that transcended millennia. It was the voice of a species that had seen the birth and death of stars. Valerius gathered himself, his training as a high scion taking over, pushing past the awe and the fear. He stepped forward to the communication node, allowing his own thoughts to be translated and broadcast. "I am High Scion Valerius of the Cathar Imperium. We are a people of peace, but we will defend our territory. Your vessel sits within our borders. We ask you to state your purpose." The image of the grieving human faded, replaced by the star chart again. The voice returned, its tone unchanged, a calm ocean of ancient thought. "Purpose is a complex concept. This vessel has several. It is an archive, it is a memorial, and it is a warning. As for territory, your claim is noted. But the laws you govern yourselves by do not apply to the mission of the Vigil. It goes where it must." "A warning," Valerius pressed, his mind racing. "A warning of what?" There was a pause, a beat of silence that felt heavier than all the silence that had come before. "The truth, but the truth is a burden. We do not share it lightly. Your species has reached a critical juncture. You stand at the precipice of galactic stewardship. We have observed you. Your history, your philosophy of balance, it is promising, but observation is insufficient. We require dialogue. We invite you aboard." The offer was as shocking as it was terrifying. To board an alien vessel of such power and mystery, it was a diplomat's dream and a soldier's nightmare. Vorlag would have called it the final, irresistible lure of the trap. But Valerius felt something else. He did not sense deception in the voice. He sensed only a profound, exhausted sincerity. "We accept your invitation," Valerius said, the decision solidifying in his mind. He knew, with a certainty that transcended logic, that the fate of his people rested not on the singularity projectors of their warships, but on the conversation that was about to take place within that silent, impossible ship. The boarding process was as surreal as the vessel itself. A section of the Vigil's hull did not open with a conventional airlock, but simply dissolved. It became a shimmering, translucent portal, a window into the ship's interior. Valerius, along with a small, unarmed delegation of scientists and diplomats, crossed the threshold in a small transport skiff. As they passed through the portal, the universe outside vanished. There was no sensation of movement, only a profound sense of transition. The air within was cool, clean, and carried a faint, unidentifiable scent like ozone and ancient stone. The interior of the Vigil was a place of breathtaking, terrifying beauty. It was not the sterile, functional corridor of a warship. It was a cathedral. The walls were the same matte black material as the hull, but they soared upwards to a height that seemed impossible, lost in a soft, ambient gloom. Light emanated not from fixtures, but from glowing geometric patterns that pulsed in slow, hypnotic rhythms along the walls and floor. The space itself felt wrong. The angles were non-Euclidean, distances shifting and subjective. A corridor seemed to stretch to infinity, yet a few steps would bring you to its end. It was a space built by minds who saw geometry not as a set of rules, but as a medium for art. Their skiff settled silently onto a platform in the center of a vast, circular chamber. In the middle of the chamber stood a single figure. It was a perfect, three-dimensional projection of the same human they had seen on the external display. It was tall, clad in a simple, seamless gray uniform. Its face was etched with lines of age and care, but its eyes, a deep, piercing blue, held a look of profound intelligence and an almost unbearable sadness. "Welcome, High Scion Valerius. The voice from the bridge resonated from the projection, though its lips did not move. I am the custodian. I am the sentient archive of this vessel and the last will and testament of the people who built it. Valerius and his delegation stepped out onto the platform, feeling dwarfed by the scale of the chamber and the gravity of the custodian's presence. "You are a machine?" Valerius asked, his voice steady despite the awe that threatened to overwhelm him. "I am and I am not," the custodian replied. "I am the consciousness of a billion minds distilled and preserved. I am the memory of a civilization. The humans who built this ship are long gone. They are dust and echoes." The revelation struck Valerius with an unexpected force. This was not an embassy. It was a tomb, a monument to a dead species. The ship was not a predator, it was a ghost. "You said your purpose was a warning," Valerius said, getting to the heart of the matter. "And a memorial. What great tragedy befell your people?" The custodian's sad eyes seemed to gaze through him into the distant past. And why people did not fall to war or plague or folly. They were eclipsed. We rose to great heights. We mastered matter and energy. We learned to reshape worlds and ignite stars. We even learned to touch the fabric of time, not to travel through it as your fictions might imagine, but to perceive its currents, to see the echoes of the future and the ghosts of the past. The chamber around them began to change. The glowing patterns on the walls swirled and coalesced, forming images. They saw cities of impossible grace, humans living in what looked like a paradise of technological and spiritual harmony. They saw them exploring the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as scholars and artists. "It was our greatest achievement, and our most terrible curse," the custodian continued, its voice tinged with the sorrow of the images around them. "In OURDEPSD explorations of causality, we discovered a truth that broke our civilization's heart. We learned that the universe is cyclical. It is born in fire, it expands and cools, and then it contracts and dies only to be reborn. But we were not the first, nor would we be the last." The imagery shifted. Valerius saw a timeline of unimaginable scale, universes blooming and dying like flowers, civilizations rising and falling within them, each one thinking itself unique, the pinnacle of creation. "We found evidence, relics, echoes left in the quantum foam from previous cycles, from civilizations that had come before. We realized we were just one verse in an infinite cosmic song, but we also discovered a dissonance in that song, a recurring, malevolent theme, a threat that emerged in every cycle, a predator that culled the galaxy of advanced life before it could reach its final, transcendent state. The beautiful images of human achievement were replaced by scenes of cosmic horror. Fleets of ships, vast and powerful, being erased from existence. Worlds being consumed by phenomena that defied physics. A creeping, insidious darkness that seemed to unravel reality itself. "A galactic enemy," Valerius breathed, the implications settling on him like a shroud. "An empire of conquerors." "No," the custodian said, the single word cutting through the air with chilling finality. "Not an empire, not something you could fight with warships and armies. It was more fundamental. A great filter of a kind. We called it the entropy cascade, a phenomenon where the laws of physics themselves begin to fail. A weaponized decay of reality. It was not natural. It was directed, intelligent, but its motives were beyond our comprehension." Valerius stared, speechless. This was a foe beyond his darkest imaginings. How could one fight against the dissolution of physical law? "My people faced this threat. We fought. We held it at bay for 10,000 years. We bent space and time to create shields of causality, but we could not defeat it. We could only delay it. We knew we were doomed. Our cycle was ending. So we poured all of OUR knowledge, OUR history, OUR art, OUR sorrow into this vessel, the Vigil, and we gave it one final, desperate purpose." The custodian turned its gaze directly upon Valerius. "We built it to survive the death of our universe. The Vigil is not merely a ship. It is a causality-stabilized ark, shielded from the end and the beginning. It drifted in the void between CYCLES, waiting for the new universe, your universe, to mature, waiting for life to rise again." The scale of the revelation was so immense it was almost paralyzing. Valerius struggled to process the words. This ship, it wasn't from the future. It was from the past. A past so remote it predated their own creation. It was a relic from a dead cosmos. The advanced technology that seemed like something from the future was, in fact, the most ancient artifact in the galaxy. "Why?" Valerius managed to ask. "Why send this warning? Why not simply let your memory die with your universe?" Because hope is the final, most indomitable law of intelligent life, the custodian said. My creators believed that one day a species might arise that could succeed where they failed. A species that possessed not only the intellect, but the wisdom and the temperament to confront the cascade. So the Vigil was given its mission, to find such a species, to test THEM. Test us. Yes, the Vigil is designed to be an enigma. Its silence, its impossible form, its passivity, IT is all a carefully calibrated filter. A lesser species, one ruled by fear and aggression, would have attacked IT. They would have seen a threat and sought its destruction, and in doing so, proven themselves unworthy. The Vigil's defensive SYSTEMS, subtle as they are, would have ensured its survival, and it would have moved on to continue its search in another galaxy, another eon. The chamber fell silent. Valerius understood everything now. Vorlag's proposed preemptive strike, it would have been the ultimate failure. They would have been dismissed as just another race of violent primitives, unworthy of the truth, left to face the coming darkness in ignorance. But you did not attack, the custodian continued, a faint, almost imperceptible warmth entering its tone. Your people DEBATED. You FEARED, yes, but you allowed wisdom to govern your fear. Your philosophy of balance, which could have been a rigid dogma, proved to be a source of true strength. You chose to understand before you chose to destroy. And so, High Scion VALERIUS, you have passed the test. Your people have proven themselves worthy of the warning. And of the knowledge contained within this ark. The walls of the chamber began to glow with a brilliant white light. The geometric patterns resolved into streams of data, a torrent of information so vast it made Valerius's mind ache just to perceive it. The complete scientific, cultural, and historical knowledge of the human race. A legacy of a dead universe, offered as a gift. This is a burden beyond imagining, Valerius whispered, humbled to his very core. It is, the custodian agreed, but it is also a weapon, the knowledge of how to manipulate causality, the SECRETS of spacetime engineering, the history of the Cascade's advance in the last cycle. Everything MY creators knew. It is all yours now. We cannot fight this battle for you. We are only a memory, but we can give you the sword. Valerius felt the weight of 1 billion dead souls settling upon his shoulders. The Cathar had believed themselves to be the masters of their destiny, a powerful empire on the verge of a golden age. They were, in fact, children playing in the shadow of a tidal wave, unaware of their own imminent oblivion. This human ghost, this echo from a forgotten creation, had just handed them a fighting chance. An alliance not between two living species, but between the present and the impossibly distant past. We accept, Valerius said, his voice ringing with a newfound, solemn purpose. We accept the burden and the hope. The Cathar will not let your people's memory be in vain. We will face this darkness. We will honor your sacrifice. The projection of the custodian offered a gesture that Valerius's mind interpreted as a slow, respectful nod. That is all MY creators could have wished FOR. The Vigil is now at your disposal. Its systems, its archives, its power are yours to command. OUR watch is over. Yours is just beginning. When Valerius returned to the equilibrium, he was a changed being. The bridge crew looked at him with a mixture of awe and trepidation, sensing the profound shift in his entire demeanor. He did not speak of his experience immediately. He simply ordered the ship to return to the capital, his mind a whirlwind of cosmic history and terrifying future possibilities. Grand consensus was reconvened in an emergency session. This time the chamber was not filled with the hum of anxiety, but with a taut, electric silence as Valerius stood on his dais and recounted his experience within the Vigil. He projected the images the custodian had shown him, the rise and fall of humanity, the cyclical nature of the universe, the horrifying, creeping decay of the entropy cascade. He shared the vessel's true nature, not a warship but an ark, not a threat but a gift. A final parate message of hope from a long-dead civilization. When he finished, a silence deeper than any the chamber had ever known descended. The Scions were stunned into immobility. Vorlag's platform was a dull, lifeless gray, his martial certainty shattered by a truth far more terrifying than any conventional enemy. Lyra S. was a pale, trembling azure, her hope for peace replaced by the grim reality of a war for existence itself. A warship so advanced, it's like something from the future, Vorlag murmured, his voice hollow with disbelief, repeating the phrase that had once been a mark of his fear and was now a testament to his profound ignorance. We were wrong. It is so much more. It is a relic from the past sent to save our future. The vote to accept the alliance with the memory of humanity and to take command of the Vigil was instantaneous and unanimous. The Cathar Imperium, a civilization that had prided itself on its stoic self-reliance, was now inextricably bound to the legacy of a species they had never met. Their age of expansion was over. A new age had begun, an age of preparation, an age of war against the fundamental laws of the cosmos. In the cycles that followed, the Cathar and the custodian of the Vigil worked in concert. The vast archives of human knowledge were slowly, carefully integrated into Cathar science. Their understanding of the universe expanded 1,000-fold in a single generation. They learned to build with impossible materials, to draw energy from vacuum, to perceive the faint currents of causality. They began to construct a fleet unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, ships built not just of metal and energy, but of woven spacetime designed to withstand the unraveling of reality. Valerius, his role as High Scion now transformed into that of a war leader against a cosmic absolute, spent much of his time aboard the Vigil, communing with the custodian. He walked its impossible halls, studied the art and philosophy of its creators, and felt a growing kinship with the ghosts who had built it. He felt their sorrow, their courage, and their undying hope. He learned that humanity had been a species of profound contradictions, capable of great cruelty and even greater compassion, of devastating folly and transcendent wisdom. In their final moments, they had chosen wisdom. One cycle, as Valerius stood with the custodian in the central chamber, observing a holographic map of the galaxy, the custodian pointed to a region on the far periphery. The map was overlaid with data from the Vigil's ancient sensors, data that measured the stability of physical law. A faint, spreading stain of decay emanated from that region, the entropy cascade. It was slow, but it was accelerating. "The decay is not random," the custodian stated, its voice holding a new, colder edge that Valerius had never heard before. "In the final years of our own struggle, we confirmed a terrible suspicion. The cascade is not a purely natural phenomenon that has been weaponized. Its point of origin is artificial." The map zoomed in on a single, unremarkable point of empty space between galaxies. There was nothing there. No stars, no nebulae, nothing but the cold, intergalactic void. "We do not understand how or why," the custodian continued. "Our final probes were destroyed before they could gather sufficient data. But we know something resides in that void, an intelligence of immense antiquity, perhaps a survivor from a cycle even more ancient than our own. It is not merely directing the decay, it is feeding on it. The end of the universe is not its goal. The process of dissolution, the unraveling of order into chaos, is its sustenance. It is a being that consumes reality." Valerius stared at the empty point on the map, a point of absolute blackness that now seemed more terrifying than a supernova. Their enemy was not a force of nature. It was not a mindless phenomenon. It was a predator of a scope so vast it defied imagination, an entity that was actively murdering the universe for its own survival. The Cathar had been preparing to fight a storm. The custodian had just revealed the storm had a mind, and it was hungry. A new, even more profound weight settled upon Valerius. The ghost of humanity had given them a sword, but they had only just now shown them the true face of the dragon. He looked from the map to the silent, sad projection of the custodian, the last remnant of a civilization that had faced this same horror. He thought of his own people, the Cathar, with their cherished philosophy of balance, now thrust into a role as the defenders of all existence. He felt no fear. The emotion was too small, too personal for the scale of this truth. Instead, he felt a vast, cold clarity, a sense of ultimate purpose. The balance he had sought to maintain his entire life was not just about politics or diplomacy within his own empire. It was the grand, cosmic balance between existence and oblivion, between creation and the silent, hungry thing that waited in the dark between the galaxies. "Then we know where to strike," Valerius said, his voice not the voice of a diplomat or a politician, but of a sentinel standing watch at the end of all things. "Humanity gave us a warning. The Cathar will deliver the answer." The Vigil, the ancient tomb that had become their greatest hope, pulsed with a soft, steady light around them, a ghost ship ready to sail into the heart of a final, impossible night. The war for reality had begun.